We'll start with the Middle East and some breaking news. President Trump is now on his way to Israel. Here's part of what he told reporters at Joint Base Andrews before taking off just moments ago.
This is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved. And we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before.
The president's trip comes amid growing anticipation of the release of the remaining Israeli hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Their families are being told the process of releasing their loved ones will start Monday morning local time. It could happen within the next few hours. As a part of the ceasefire, we should also see the release of more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees being held by Israel. Meanwhile, U.S. troops have started arriving in Israel, where they are establishing a coordination center to support and monitor the ceasefire. Vice President J.D. Vance sounding optimistic about a peace deal today on ABC's This Week.
We are on the cusp of true peace in the Middle East, really for the first time in my lifetime. Certainly, these 20 hostages are going to come home to their families, George. I think this is a great moment for our country. Our country should be proud of our diplomats who made this happen. It's really a great moment for the world, too, which is why the president's going to go over there and celebrate with these hostages. But it's a great thing, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, let's bring in our team chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell, who is in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. Jay O'Brien is at the White House. And ABC News contributor and former U.S. ambassador to NATO, retired Army Lieutenant General Doug Lutz. So, Ian, let's start with you. The hostages have been in captivity for more than 2 years now. What's it like being in Israel just hours before they could be released?
Yeah, Perry, I mean, you can tangibly feel a lightning in the atmosphere. There is almost an electric sense of anticipation that perhaps this long 2-year nightmare is going to be open. But of course, it's not just a moment of joy. It's also a moment of pain for so many people. It reminds them of what happened 2 years ago. It reminds them of how many people have lost their lives. And it's also worth stating that amongst the 20 living hostages, it's feared that some of them are severely ill. We saw notifications that have been issued by the Israeli government to the families of hostages, warning of the dangers of reintroducing food, calling it refeeding syndrome, which is what happens when someone's been severely malnourished. So they're going to be in a rough shape. They're going to need emergency medical treatment. And then we've got the bodies of 28 others. Now, not all of those will be released tomorrow. Contact has been lost with the locations where some of the Israeli hostages who had died were actually buried, and some of the people who buried them are no longer alive themselves. So we've got this international search team which will begin its job once the initial phase has passed. And then, of course, we've got this process of more than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, some convicted, but many of them had been held without trial, without charge, by Israel, including women and children, and they will also get to go home, or what's left of their home.
Yeah, Ian, you mentioned the hostages being held by Hamas. 20 are believed to be alive. 28 are presumed dead. President Trump has said that he believes the 28 will be unearthed. So we believe that means they will be dug up in some capacity and then given back to their families. But still some questions about those that they are not able to find right now. Jay, over to you. What's at stake for President Trump as he heads over to the Middle East in such a pivotal moment?
I think it's fair to say, Perry, that if he can land this peace deal, it will be the most consequential foreign policy achievement of not just this term, but of his previous term as well, ending this war. Remember, this was a key campaign promise of President Trump's, to end this conflict in Gaza and also to end the war in Ukraine, which has proven even more difficult to wind down to a close. President Trump and White House officials have said that he was intimately involved in securing this agreement, leveraging his relationship not just with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They have a personal relationship, not just exerting what the White House calls pressure on the Israelis and on Netanyahu, but also using the president and his son-in-law Jared Kushner and others' relationships with Arab and Muslim leaders, getting their buy-in on this peace deal. So watch those dynamics play out when the president touches down there. He'll speak to the Israeli parliament, the Israeli Knesset, when he first stops off after he meets with the families of hostage members. Watch watch his reception at the Knesset, because it's tough for the Knesset to applaud President Trump and applaud the peace deal he's delivered and then express skepticism about the deal. And then, of course, watch those dynamics play out with Arab and Muslim leaders when he meets in Sharm el-Sheikh at that peace summit that the Egyptian president says he and President Trump will host there.
Doug, military question. Talk to us about the role the U.S. military is going to play in securing peace.
Well, apparently the U.S. military will have some troops on the ground, probably in Israel, forming what the military calls a CMMC, a Civil Military Coordination Center. Sorry, I got that wrong, CMCC. And this coordination center brings together American military, probably Israeli counterparts, and very important civilian agencies like aid agencies and international observers and so forth. They will all sit in one sort of command center, coordination center, and look at the same picture portrayed by open sources, news reporting and so forth, but also by way of American intelligence. And from this common picture, they'll be able to determine how are these initial steps actually playing out on the ground. Have the Israeli forces withdrawn as prescribed? They'll watch carefully the return of the hostages, and most important, from a humanitarian situation, they'll watch the opening of the aid corridors. So that'll all be done by way of this coordination center.
Ian, we know this is a delicate process. Once the hostages are released, do we know what happens next?
Yeah, so once hostages are released, then the bodies will be released. It's basically a 72-hour window to return the bodies of the deceased hostages, which can be found. And then you've got this international search team, which will then commence its work inside Gaza, trying to locate the other positions of the other bodies. You then have these 2,000 Palestinian, or around 2,000 Palestinian prisoners who will be returned mostly to Gaza. Those who are hardcore, if you like, those who've committed serious crimes will not be allowed back to Gaza. They'll probably go abroad. They'll be reunited with their loved ones. If they're still alive, they'll go back to their homes if they still stand. But we cannot overstate the level of destruction inside Gaza. Well over 80% of the population have essentially lost their homes. Our reporter who's on the ground inside Gaza, he also returned to his home, which was damaged but livable in. He said that many people who'd gone back up north basically couldn't find their homes. They can't even find their streets. It is all gone, and we're hearing this time and again. Their homes, their lives, their communities, their relatives have literally been ground into dust. So the scale of reconstruction is going to be absolutely enormous. Qatar and some of those other Arab and Muslim countries that President Trump has put together in this coalition have already volunteered to step forward with that. But that is going to take a long time. And even just going through the rubble, you know, over the last 24 hours or so, well over 100 bodies, Palestinian bodies, have been recovered from underneath the rubble. So again, for them, there is still this process of grieving, trying to move on, but this is going to be years in the undertaking.
Yeah, Ian, while you were speaking, we had you in a side-by-side with Gaza, where people are walking around their neighborhoods where nothing's left, so major questions about their future. Doug, over to you. Vice President J.D. Vance says we are on the cusp of true peace in the region. Is he right?
Well, at least the initial steps of true peace. You know, these first 3 or 4 steps, which are verifiable and which will play out in the next several days, are very important first steps. But because of the level of destruction that we just described, the follow-on steps will be much more complicated. So who provides the security in Gaza as the Israeli forces withdraw? Ultimately, who governs Gaza if it's not Hamas? And finally, who provides the reconstruction funding to deal with the devastation that is there now? The current situation is that the 2 million Gazan civilians basically are homeless. So there are major challenges in the way ahead.
Doug, Ian, Jay, thank you for your time.